Here. Hertzberg, Lou. Lou here.
Okay, so the chair notes the presence of a quorum. We also note the presence of Senator Bonilla, and we welcome you to the table to present AB 990.
Well, first of all, I want to say I appreciate you very much hearing this bill, and know we're in a very busy time here. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members, for being here. I present to you AB 990, which will increase, hopefully, voter access to information and their understanding of a candidate's campaign message. And that's a clear distinction between the candidate's campaign message and all those other messages that they're getting that we find lead to great confusion and, frankly, accumulate in animosity towards the candidate. And that is a real problem. I would like to say first I accept the suggested committee amendments listed in the analysis. I'd like to accept 2 additional authors' amendments, which I have discussed with the committee. The author's amendments would require 14-point font instead of 18-point, and we did ask that you have a sample in front of you of what 14-point font looks like. In the committee analysis, it shows the 18-point, so it is a smaller font size. And also decrease the line, the black line weight of the box from 5.25 to 3.25, so we're making it smaller than the original bill. This is consistent with input from stakeholders and from FFPC. We didn't want to run into any problems with the bill. AB 990 requires all campaign mailers paid for by independent expenditures to include an easily identified statement that the mailer was not paid for or authorized by the candidate running for office. We know that campaign spending has increased significantly. One example is from this past November 4th, 2014, that election, that almost $32 million was spent in elections. Each election, increasing amounts of campaign mailers arrive at voters' homes. In a recent primary in Los Angeles, when you took several of their elections together, one household received over 200 mailers. That was 7 pounds of campaign mail. Interest groups should be able to communicate their view. However, the flurry of mailers makes it extremely difficult for voters to understand who actually is sending the message. I believe that 990 will remedy this problem by requiring a clear disclosure statement on all independent expenditure advertisements. This will allow voters to know if the message is coming from the candidate or from an outside group. Specifically in the bill, it requires the disclosure statement be near the voter's address, which will also make it easier to read. When voters receive over 200 campaign mailers, you can imagine that they're not searching somewhere on that mailer to find who sent it. A 990 fixes the problem by making it simple for voters to notice, and I honestly hope that not only, I believe this bill actually is good for every candidate in any party, in any race. This is good for them because it allows the actual candidate's message to come out clearly. But also, I'm really hoping that it encourages voter engagement. I think we're seeing more and more voters become increasingly the sense of being disenfranchised in the process, and hopefully this will help in their education and keep them engaged. I have with me today Paul Bergerino from Contra Costa County's Election Office for Voter Education and Engagement in support of the bill.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me here. I'm here representing Contra Costa County Registrar of Voters, Joe Cansamilla, who couldn't be here today. On his behalf, I want to share a little bit about the experiences we've had and why you should support State Assembly Bill 990. Our office has been working hard with the community engagement and education program, as the Assemblywoman mentioned, to educate and inform voters by providing access to streams of information. And the goal of that, ultimately, is to show citizens why knowledge of critical issues is so important and really try to get them excited as far as being involved as part of community and civic life. Unfortunately, the emerging trend in political ads and mailers kind of threatens our mission. For many campaigns, our staff has heard constant and continual complaints from residents who have been just bombarded with mailers, like you were talking about, Susan, just like the pounds of mailers. It's shocking kind of to describe it in pounds. One of the frequent complaints we hear is the negative tone of those ads, and as voters grow more and more frustrated and disenchanted, the amount of time they take to look at mailers decreases and becomes less and less. So they don't really kind of care to look at who's responsible for the message. They just simply point the fingers at the candidates. During a recent election, I was out as part of our community engagement team out in Danville, Pittsburgh, some of our communities, and kind of the common theme that we heard was as we had mobile drop-off boxes, for vote by mail, one of our goals to try to, make voting easier for people is people were complaining to us, telling us point blank that they weren't going to vote just because they were tired of the barrage of mailers. That same election, I was in the tally room, we call it. I think, Senator Allen, I think you visited us for one of those. We were counting vote by mail ballots, and I was there with employees who'd been there for, 20, 25 years, and it was kind of hard to believe. We noticed there were a higher than number normal of blank ballots and overvotes and undervotes where, people, they either voted for both people or voted for they just turned in a blank ballot, so they didn't count, but they still wanted to know that they want to be part of the process. They're just frustrated with it. And we also had people who would, make their snide remarks on the side, just about saying, I voted for 50 years and I've never noticed, the amount of mailers. Some things they wrote were more civil than others. Yes. AB 990 would help by making the source of the ads more transparent and, including some of the things we're talking about, including a disclosure statement that declares the advertisement was not paid for by the candidate or a candidate-controlled committee, would ensure the voter has a good idea of where the ad's coming from, but more importantly, they would know where the ad is not coming from. The emphasis on the location near the mailing address, the boldness, the font size you're talking about, and the difference in color would really make it, add a level of openness, transparency, and make it a little bit simpler. Your approval of this bill will hopefully be a step toward inviting registered voters into participating rather than driving them away. So if there are any other questions as we go on, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, and thank you, Assemblymember. I couldn't agree more with everything that's been said, and I did get to personally see some of the less family-friendly messages put on the ballots that were counted that very election night in Contra Costa. If anything, I'm actually just disappointed that we're knocking down the size. I thought that the 18-point font is very bold and clear. I'm sure 14-point will still do the trick, but do you want to speak to why that we felt necessary to do that when this was unanimously passed through every other assembly?
This is our first hearing, yeah.
Okay.
We did
I got you.
It's a good
Okay.
amendment. I think we understood that, at least that was my understanding, that there could be a question if it was too large, that it could be challenged as impinging upon the rights of those people buying the mailers to clearly communicate their message. So it was really, I like the big font too, that's why we picked it, but we were trying to make sure that, I guess primarily, and I don't know, Sarah, if you want to come up as the FPPC, the FPPC really communicated that to us, that they felt there might be a risk of a lawsuit if it was too large.
I support the 18 font. Obviously I'll support this bill, but the one other thing I just wanted to clarify, this sheet that you gave us, the language is different, the actual wording. This says this mailer was not paid for and endorsed by the candidate, and then my understanding is that your bill asks for the language to say this advertisement was not authorized or paid for by the candidate or a committee controlled by the candidate. Just to confirm, this is the language that will actually appear.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
It is. I don't know why that's different, but yes. We were just trying to, I think, playing with the font size on that one to see what 14 looked like.
Okay, all right. Questions from the committee? Mr. Vice Chair, yeah, and then Senator Hancock.
So, on a more technical level, have you run this by the post office? They have automated equipment, and how will this work with their automated equipment? Because potentially you could be driving up the cost of the mail considerably in postage.
I'm not sure how it would interfere with their automated.
With the example, there's certain positions on the mailer.
That the post office
Like it would be
requires.
read as,
Right, so we don't want to.
I'll let my staff answer that.
We don't want to be conflicting out with the postal DMM.
Yeah, we have been talking with the post office, and as written, it wouldn't be a problem for their automated machines. We were specifically discussing the barcode placement with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I agree. I think this is needed and really a great idea. My question related to the requirement for disclosure of contributions that are cumulatively $50,000.
I don't, is that in my bill? Yeah, that's not in the bill. I think that's existing law, is it?
Yeah,
Oh.
it's existing law.
Okay, okay, thank you. So your bill is only that. Okay.
It's not in the bill, but where the bill increases the type size, that includes all disclosure statements in that article, and that article includes
Oh, great.
the disclosure statements
Okay.
that you are now referencing.
Okay,
So it does just.
It
sort of like-
affects
yeah,
those,
right.
but we're
Yeah.
not calling them out, but it
Good.
Right, but it will increase the size
increases their
from
font size
10
from that tiny
yeah,
10.
no, I think that's a
this
very
one.
good thing, too. I guess my question, and I don't know if committee staff who researched this or, people who work in the elections business know this, because I was wondering why it was so low as $50,000, frankly, since you could put out a mailing for probably about 35,000. Just if you've noticed a large number of independent expenditures coming out at like 49,000 or something like that.
Well,
Does,
I think that is only referring to the ballot measure. This would be for any independent expenditure
Right.
in an election that a candidate is involved in, well, even if it was $5,000, right?
And just
Anything
for-
that's not from the candidate would have to carry this.
Again, Senator, for
Okay.
clarification, that threshold, that 50,000, top two contributors who have contributed at least 50,000,
Yeah.
that's to the committee that put out the mailer, not necessarily for the mailer itself. So even if the mailer only costs 10,000, but that committee received
Okay.
contributions of at least 50,000 from two sources, they would still have to list those two
okay, what
on
if it
there.
only got 50,000 from one source?
Then they would only have to
Okay.
disclose one.
And if they got them from three sources?
You take the top two. There have been other bills that have not yet been successful to increase that to the top three,
And
as
really,
I'm sure you remember.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, at the appropriate time, I'd be happy to move the bill.
So, I mean, did you want to see that number drop, the 50?
I dropped from 50.
Yeah.
I might, but I would defer to a more deliberative process
Sure.
than amending it right now.
I think might make sense.
Yeah, I think this bill is a good beginning.
Senator Hertzberg.
Yeah, just thinking about that, Senator, I think that could have some interesting implications, because someone then could give 10 contributions of 25 and no
Right.
one would have to disclose. So
Exactly.
you'd have to tweak that in a way if the top two and/or a number different, you know what I mean? The top two period of whatever as long as it's over 5,000, and then, you know what I mean? Otherwise, you could have an adverse consequence
Well,
of that.
I mean, look, we all have been in elections. You're not going to get a mailer out for more than 5,000 to the constituents of a district.
Yeah,
So-
well, this adds a new lever.
Yeah.
Even if you get this out for $150 and it's from an independent expenditure committee, my reading of the law is that this has to be disclosed because it's not coming from the candidate. So it completely eliminates all thresholds. We can, maybe there's a new methodology outside of the post office, or maybe the post office changes its rates or something, who cares? But my point was this. In terms of the public being barraged with stuff. You know, most of these things look like insurance company brochures to me. You know, I can't tell the difference or pay any attention, and like most people throw them away unless I know the person. And so my only thought was, if the notion here was to get to a way to be effective, to make sure that folks didn't saw this was independent, what you might want to do, you know, I'm not going to fall on a sword on this, just thinking out loud as someone who's how to send a message. This advertisement was not authorized or paid for by Assemblymember Bonilla or a committee controlled by her. In other words, you can still put in the language that requires the same thing, just put the individual name in, and it's a more effective way than looking like some kind of thing on the back of cigarettes that your eye generally looks differently, and in fact, you know what I mean?
What if it's a negative piece or a purposely misleading piece? And we've seen some of those in campaigns too.
I know, but my only thought was,
whose name do you put on that point?
what do you mean? Will you put down this with whoever the candidate is? It says the candidate or
There's
committee
a
controlled
candidate
by the
between
candidate.
let's say it's a 5-person race, and it's a negative hit on one person.
Or 3.
You know, right? Or 3, right? I mean, you know what I mean? It gets.
Oh, I see.
That would only work in the general, yeah.
Yeah, or
you've
if it's
got down
one,
to
or it's
2.
against one candidate. Yeah, I guess so. You think about it. I was just trying to drill in a little deeper and
Yeah,
give
no,
some
it's-
thought about trying to be the most effective message. So, you know, I mean, often we always use the exception to prove the rule, but so often it is really against one candidate. It is, as in your race, was a bunch of negative mail back and forth, never saw any of it.
Yeah.
But it was the case. So you wanted to have that message. There's the aberration where, in the instance where it's involving more than one candidate, you could say that. I don't know.
Yeah, and your
I was
point-
just trying to be effective because I'm just telling you, you see so much of this stuff as a voter, and your eyes get tired to
Yeah.
it. And the thought would be, you know, what are we trying to achieve from a public policy perspective? We're trying to make sure, because we have these proliferation of independent committees because of the Constitution and how it's been interpreted by the court, to actually make some sense of it. That's what we're trying to do. That's the purpose of your bill. And so you want to separate that and make sure that when, you know, somebody who you have no control over doesn't adversely affect you. And my only sense is that I look at these kinds of things and it's just, you know, my eye doesn't go to it, is the point.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know how you do it, and
Does
maybe you
have
give
to
it a
be an
bigger think. All I wanted to try to do is to get something that really achieves the deliverable rather than just another boilerplate box
That's why I
below
think
your
the
name.
18 points better, and I don't
It's
know
better.
why.
No, I got-
18 and 14 suddenly triggers a First Amendment issue. The other issue is what happens when it's a negative. What happens when it's a negative piece? Of course, it's not paid for by the candidate because it's attacking the candidate. And what if it's a I mean, maybe it should say paid for by any candidate. You know, because there's a lot of hit pieces that are done by IEs. Oftentimes, the worst ones are done by IEs. So,
Yeah,
Senator
all right.
Hancock, that might
I'm
be
just trying to be
something-
sensitive to really
think
try to touch the voter.
I think we want to strengthen the bill. I think if anything. I mean, I don't know what sort of political considerations you're under right now trying to get this through under these circumstances, but
I think that the urgency was because we wanted it to be in effect for 16.
yeah.
You know, so that people knew it was coming. But I see your point on when it's a negative piece and it says the candidate, yeah, maybe any candidate is I don't know. That's certainly
A
something to
candidate, I
consider.
guess, because if it's a one-on-one. Senator Hancock.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that we should move forward and vote on this bill now, but I noticed it's keys fiscal, so it will go to appropriations, and
Yes.
I would encourage the sponsors of the bill to look at this and figure out what you do in cases of a negative ad being done by an IE. If you're trying to say that it was not done by the candidate's opponent, or what are you trying to do? Right?
Right, I mean, it's clear. So
Yeah.
tell Joe to go to work, come on.
And,
But in the meantime, this needs to happen in cases
Yeah.
where things are purporting to come from a candidate that might reflect badly on that candidate when it's a setup, right? So I think that we should vote on this today. And I have moved the bill. I don't know if there are
Okay.
speakers in opposition.
Is there public comment on any comment on the bill? Okay, so the bill's been moved. committee staff has a suggestion that we don't have to vote on right now, but the suggestion would be to change the two words, the use of the two words "the" to "a." So it would say this advertisement was not authorized or paid for by a candidate or a committee controlled by a
that's
candidate.
A very good idea. Very good suggestion. Yeah.
And, but also, I would sit down and grid this thing out, because the committee has raised, you got a lot of experts who have been through this stuff, and grid out all the various iterations and make sure whatever language works best for all the various iterations, multiple candidates, all these different races. And I think if you grid it out, you might want to further, you'll probably, beyond this one amendment, which I think is the right thing to do, you'll probably get to a cleaner version, because we all are with you, you know?
Okay. So the item's been moved. Let's ask the secretary to call. Well, we'll ask you to close, and then.
Well, thank you so much, and I think that's a great suggestion, and any other suggestions you have, we'd be very happy to also consider. I think that what I've learned, and this is really an educational process of the voter, is that voters do assume that their mail is coming directly from the warring candidates, however many there are. And they don't understand the dynamic of an independent expenditure, and they certainly don't understand that it's not controlled by the candidate. They truly believe that somehow you are doing it somehow. And so this is a step, and I think it's a first step, and it's certainly not comprehensive in helping our voters understand this distinction. And so that's really the goal, is to make sure that the candidate is distinct from the independent expenditure as much as possible. And I think we could do more, and hopefully will continue to do more. But this was certainly a first step to say anyone who is currently elected is now getting kind of tarred with the brush of indiscriminate, independent expenditures, and we don't want to be held accountable.
Yeah.
And so this is a step towards that. So thank you, and would ask for your support of this.
Okay. Thank you, Assemblymember. Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is due pass to Senate Appropriations. Allen?
Aye.
Allen, aye. Anderson?
No.
Anderson, no. Hancock?
Aye.
As
Hancock,
amended.
aye. Hertzberg? Hertzberg, aye. Lou? Lou, aye.
And to clarify, that was it as amended?
Correct.
To pass it. Okay. So that carries 4-1. Congratulations, Assemblymember, and we look forward to working with you further on this.
We want to work with Mr. Anderson, too, to find out why he didn't like it. Oh, well, you give me the effective version, and we'll take it to a probes, because we want to be effective, honestly.
So with that, we adjourn this meeting. Thank you so much to the members.